Hi, my name is Tom Ollerton, and this is the Shiny New Object podcast. This is a modcast. This is a podcast. Maybe that's the thing. It's a podcast about new marketing technology, and every week I have the privilege of interviewing a exciting person from the industry, an inspiring person from the industry, or a new person from the industry that I've not met before. And I can't remember actually how we got introduced to each other. Paul, I'm obviously sat here with Paul Rushforth, who is the Director of Advanced Technology at NBCUniversal. We had a conversation in Liverpool Street, and I thought you'd be brilliant for the podcast. So how did we meet? I can't remember. How did we get introduced?
Very kind of you to say. We were introduced by our mutual friend Andy Tate, I think, who suggested to me that you would be a perfect addition to a series of talks we were doing on artificial intelligence.
Right, brilliant.
That's how we met.
But this isn't about me, it's about you. So people who might not be familiar with who you are and what you do, can you just give us a quick overview?
Sure. So I am head of advanced technology, director of advanced technology for NBCUniversal, and NBCUniversal is a huge international media powerhouse, part of the Comcast family. Most people will probably only have heard of us recently because we've just acquired Sky Television, but we're in everybody's home, right? So we make Made in Chelsea, we make Downton Abbey, we run the Sci-Fi channel, we run the E! Entertainment channel, we're responsible for marketing all of Universal's movies and television shows outside of the US. So we're a big household brand that nobody's ever heard of. And my role is really there to help our business in a very turbulent time. As with most industries, broadcasting, television, media and content is being disrupted. Our role is to help the executives, the management and people at all levels understand how technology is impacting our business, our industry and the world around us, and how we can harness some of that technology and use it to really help deliver content to our consumers in the right place, the right time, for the right cost.
So I'm going to have to push you on Director of Advanced Technology.
So yeah.
You said that was one of your less silly job titles.
Yep, yeah, that's true.
What have the other ones been?
So I've had Director of Innovation Strategies, Director of Media Labs. They're all very grand sounding titles which have very little explanation as to what that really involves. And fundamentally, it's about a combination of thought leadership and the application of technology to solve business problems.
Cool. So hopefully we'll come back to some examples of that stuff later on. But as is customary within the podcast, I like to get to know you a bit better. So first off, if you were a young student trying to get into the industry in 2019 and knowing what you know now, what would you do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get asked that a lot, and it depends, I think, in some ways what we mean by the industry. And what's interesting is I went to college many years ago and did professional broadcasting, and everything I learned at college is now obsolete and outdated and useless. The biggest myth I will tell you is that it's not what you know, it's who you know, and that used to be true in television in the olden days, but now in the world of corporate human resources and recruitment firms, it doesn't really have the same impact. The piece of advice that I would give to people is that the standout quality that separates candidates is drive and passion. So I see so many people and meet so many people who have a sense of entitlement and really want a lot of things handed to them on a plate. And then every so often you come across the one who's set up their own production company, is making content for fun, has written scripts, is really trying hard to carve their own path. And those are the ones that are eventually going to succeed. And so my advice would be, if this isn't something, as in broadcast and television, that you want to be doing every hour that God sends, it's probably not for you. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So you've really got to dedicate yourself and position yourself to stand out around a world of other 9-to-5ers, really.
I do apologise that someone's decided to do the hoovering in the background. We are at this time next year in the real East London in Leighton. So sorry, there's going to be some of that stuff flying around. So I think that's a great point. when I'm asked a similar question on the rare occasions I do, it's like I say just start doing the job. Just do the job.
Yep.
Don't tell someone you can do the job. Demonstrate that you can. So what kind of stuff have you seen people do? Are people bringing you like TV ready stuff? Or?
Well, it's interesting because it's hard to think of whether this is an advantage or a disadvantage. But when I was a kid, you didn't have the ready access to production materials and tools that we have now, right? So you'd have to hire a VHS camera from Rumbelows or somewhere similar. Now, with an iPhone or any other form of phone, you've got broadcast quality pictures in your pocket all day, every day. And there's no excuse for not being au fait with digital video production techniques because it's everywhere. YouTube has allowed that. And I think when I was a kid, it was a lot harder, but it was also a lot easier to sit behind that and say, oh, I'd be an amazing filmmaker if I just had an 8mm camera and a Steinbeck and, all the stuff that I need to be an amazing filmmaker. And it allowed us to believe our own bluff, whereas now you have to put your money where your mouth is, because if you say to me, I'm desperate to be a filmmaker, there's no reason why you haven't set up an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter, financed your own film, found 50 friends who are also interested in that, shot it on whatever form of cameras you can get your hands on. So yeah, I see a range of stuff from kids who've picked up After Effects and learned how to do special effects on their own, through to people who are still passionate about writing and come with beautifully typed manuscripts. And I think it's about making the most of the tools you've got available, because you've never, I sound like my dad, but you've never had it so easy, right? Because it's a bit like the Yorkshire sketch. Technology is everywhere, and it's enabling people to do this stuff at home. I look in front of you at the Mac computer that you've got, and that's probably more powerful than the first custom-built bespoke editing system I learned to edit on 25 years ago. So it is pretty incredible, the facilities that we have. So expectations are even higher.
So, talking about tech, what have you spent your own money on for work? What kind of equipment, gear, gadgets have you...
God.
No, I don't mean this is expense. This is like your hard-earned that's gone on. I'll take that to work.
So, I have a crux, if you like, or a crutch, which is I believe in silver bullets, even though I know they don't exist. So I'm always trying to find that thing that's going to solve all of my problems.
Why do you believe in silver bullets?
Because I'm a northern fool. Because I think, I'll give you some examples. So I'm terrible at taking notes. So I've bought all manner of digital pens, digital books that take my notes handwritten and OCR them up to the cloud.
Does that work? I fantasize about those things, but I've never tried it.
I can share some with you. I have a drawer full of them. They don't help. Firstly, my handwriting's atrocious, so OCR just is never gonna work.
What's OCR? Sorry?
Original content recognition. So it will look at my text and it will see that I've written Tom Ollerton, and then it will transcribe that, but it doesn't work. I have all manner of different intelligent pads for note-taking that have never worked. I've tried recording things and carrying little microphones around with me. Most people think you're weird if you do that.
Well, I'm reading the... that's a bit cliche, really. I'm reading the Ray Dalio Principles book, which I think pretty much everyone else in the world. And is it Bridgewater Associates? And they record every meeting, meeting. So all audio is available to all people, which are...
Well, we've talked about that in the office as well when we've run workshops on what would help us work smarter. One of the things that comes up is intelligent meeting notes and how to capture them. So can you record everything that's said in a meeting, and every time I say, okay, action Tom, call company X and get these figures for us, the system would know that that's an action item. It would tally it up as an action item. It would add it to the notes. And
Can I also say no?
Yeah, well, this is it. So we found a solution for that. It's something that we're playing with at the moment. Whether it will take off, I don't know. People seem to have... Well, there's a system that we're using called Trint, which transcribes interviews.
It's called Trint?
Trint. Trint, yeah. Great ex-journalist, Pulitzer Prize winner, I think, journalist who came up with this system. And there's a couple of other off-the-shelf tools that promise that. I've just discovered the Google voice keyboard on my phone is far more accurate than my fat fingers and autocorrect for sending text messages. So I now dictate all of my text messages, and I can even say wink emoji, and it will do that. Because
so that's better within WhatsApp or within SMS?
Within anything, yeah.
Right,
I can't speak for the iPhone, but any of the Android apps, I select Google Keyboard and hit the microphone, and then I just speak my text.
Well, I'm going to do that.
It's brilliant. It's so much quicker and more accurate. And if you're walking down the street in London, it's so much better than staring at your phone and walking into things.
And then why not just send the audio?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I haven't quite cottoned onto that yet. My kids send me audio messages, but there's something about that that's a bit weird because the recipient would need to listen to it. So
poor them.
I know. Yeah.
Poor
God,
them.
yeah.
So come on. What else? You've bought like loads of note-taking pads and stuff. What else is?
Yeah, we've got those
in the dustbin of tech.
We had I bought a cap that had bone conduction headphones built into it. So this was a hat that I could put on and I could play audio into it without having to wear earphones. So I can still hear everything around me. I can cycle safely. I can interact with other human beings, but it's vibrating the bones just behind my ear and allows me to listen to other stuff. That was
this
nerdy.
Like Stranger Things 1980s kind of BMX hat, or was it a cowboy hat, or what was it?
It was a baseball cap. It was a very unstylish two-tone grey thing that is consigned to a cupboard somewhere. The technology itself is really smart. I don't think that application was the best.
It saved you having to wear headphones.
Yeah, so
you could wear a hat.
And I could instantly switch between phone calls and any form of audio.
And you wore this in the office?
Not many times, I'll confess.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I've subscribed to so many monthly services, whether it's subscriptions on how to manage communications, whether it's how to subscription services about like Buffer that allow me to send tweets automatically.
Do you still use Buffer?
I don't get Twitter. I realise that's a crazy thing for me to say, but 100, as you'll notice as we go through this, 144 characters is never going to be enough for me to make a point.
The really interesting thing about Buffer was Alex Jenkins, the first ever guest on the Shiny Object podcast, telling me that they had the ultimate minimum viable product. So he came up with the idea for Buffer,
right?
But didn't build it. He just built a website that said, Buffer will automatically schedule your tweets launching soon. If you're interested, put your email here. And then you got like 50,000 emails. So he then used that, I think, to raise capital. And then he built the Below the Fold, which was Buffer will cost $7.99 a month, $10.99 a month, $20.99 a month, or whatever it was. And then the people who had the most emails under whatever pricing was. So he knew how much the market was probably going to pay for it. And then he built it.
It's a really good way of testing a new product, and we've seen that before. And I tried to do it once at work, and it didn't go down very well because I think you're afforded a lot more space as a new startup with no history, no team of lawyers, and no bank account than you are if you're a multinational company like we are. So advertising a product and not shipping it, you can get away with if you're under the radar, but it's harder for someone like us to do it.
And you tried that?
We tried it once.
Right, I get in the sense you don't want to talk about it.
Probably not, no.
We'll move on. Okay, so what else have you got better at saying no to, other than secretive, non-shipped shows?
But buying terrible products.
Have you got better at saying no to that? Or
I have. So following on from that theme, there's this wonderful looking device out there called Remarkable, which is a cross between a Kindle and an iPad. So it's e-ink, but it allows you to write on it. It apparently has the same feeling as graphite running over a beautiful 80 GSM sheet of paper. Well, I haven't as yet. That's the thing I'm most proud of, is not buying something at the moment.
What are we talking about? Is this like $350 or something?
It's about $400, yeah, once you include shipping and tax. So I think one of the things I've got better at saying no to is mindless demos of stuff and helping people out with stuff that they really should be able to do themselves. And I think,
what do you mean?
Well, we contribute to this sort of there seems to be a lot of people who would rather be shown something than go and explore and find out for themselves. And I think you learn a lot better if you go out there and you're looking for something, you find the answers for yourself. So we have to do a lot of demos of different tech in and around the business, whether that's AI, whether that's, even things like Apple TV or services people might not have at home. And a lot of the time I've now got to saying, yeah, I could walk you through this, but wouldn't it be better if I just gave you the Apple TV, you took it home and just played with it, because you're going to get a better experience. And on the face of it, that might not seem like the best use of their time, but they will get much better answers to their questions than if I just give them another scripted, canned demo of something.
Right. So go and learn to drive, as opposed to me presenting a deck on what
the
drive or driving is like.
Totally.
Cool. So you said you better at saying no to these things. I'm not convinced. But so you've bought some weird stuff, and you've tried out a lot of stuff. But what are the kind of biggest fuck ups you've made in your career? I don't need to know about the terrible ones, but what are the ones that you're so glad you made that have really changed things for you?
So I think failure is the best way to learn, and a lot of people are really good at saying that and terrible at doing it, especially in big corporations. But I'm pleased to say that we have overinvested. I won't go into specifics, but there's been a couple of things even recently that we've built and we've gone as far as an MVP. So the example you were just giving about Buffer there, we kind of threw that out the window and said, no, we're just going to build this. Let's build it and we'll MVP it and we'll do all the things it says in all those books that we've read, and spent a lot of money building a product that we didn't need to build. Building a product to get feedback that we could have got with a really smart Proto.io execution, or something that we spent a couple of weeks in InVision instead of doing 4 or 5 sprints and investing in dev time. And for me, working in NBCU, we're a really visual showbiz company, so the front end is always going to take precedence over the back end. And one of the things that I've learned is to spend less time trying to prove the ins and outs of how something will work, and more time focused on what it's going to look like. And we've delivered a couple of projects in the past where we've spent far too long going deep, building something, when what we should have done is just made a mock-up, even a PowerPoint click-through of what this would look like, and saved everybody a lot of time and effort, really.
Do you not think that is the rite of passage of an innovation person, that you get buzzed up on an idea and then you want to make it, and you can hear like MVP in your head and you think no, okay, but you get so sucked into your vision. Like I can't believe I'm going to admit this, but me and my friends had this idea for a messaging app like years and years and years ago, and the insight, which is clearly not an insight, but we used to communicate with our partners with like quite staccato 3-word messages like "I love you," "See you later,"
right.
"Be home soon," "Fancy a drink." And so we thought we'd build an app where you could only use 3 words and you could sort of swipe different backgrounds and stuff. And look, in fairness to Matt Kempton and James Mitchell, they really did a beautiful job of it. But the problem is that it took so much longer to work out how to say the thing you wanted to say in 3 words than it did in 5 or 6 or 7. And that was like a year's work. And all we needed to do was to for a week, let's communicate on WhatsApp using 3 words and see if it works. And I could have had a year of my, not a year of my life, but a year's worth of evenings and weekends and stuff. But I think I needed to do that to prove to myself what a fucking idiot I was for, just getting too excited about the idea and not getting excited about what the audience wanted.
I'll give you one that I think is so well discussed within our business. I don't think it's particularly secretive, but there's always a suggestion that we're an international content business who has multiple films and movies and TV properties in multiple languages. So why do we not use all of that content to teach people how to speak different languages, right? Like we can deliver these films in any number of languages. Why don't we use that content? And the challenge, there's a multitude of challenges. Firstly, we're not educators, and that's not core to our wheelhouse. But in addition to that, there's an assumption that the language that we're using and the grammar that we're using in films is going to be an easy way of learning those languages. So while I don't doubt that sticking Friends on repeat for a week in French would help you pick up some of the nuances, I think it's there's not that great transposition in saying, well, actually, we can use the Bourne films to teach people how to speak wonderful Spanish. It just doesn't. It seems like a good idea on the surface.
That surprises me, and that keeps on coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's not necessarily that it's a bad
really.
idea. It's just that it seems like a really good idea, and the more you dig down, the harder it becomes.
And I think that's nice for you. You said two things with different points. You said, we're a showbiz company and we're not educators. There's no doubt in your mind. That's a binary there. It's not like, well, maybe we are educators. No, you're an entertainment business.
You've got to play to your strengths, I think. And when people come into difficulties, it's because they're stepping too far out of their comfort zone. I'm happy to go on record and say that we are incredible at telling stories, and we are brilliant at making movies and distributing and marketing and selling content, and that's what we're good at. If we started trying to create educational content, we're never gonna compete with a Macmillan or a Pearson or somebody who's really good at that, who breathes and lives that. So yeah, I think you really have to know what you're good at and stick to that. So
does your open innovation platform have a submit idea, and then you could maybe have some kind of text reader, then you could send that, so this is actually a bad idea? Maybe not the spirit. Anyway, moving on. So, odd question, but how do you want people to remember your career? Clearly not as an educator.
Well, so it's interesting. So that applies to our business as a whole. I like to think that one of the things that I am good at is helping people understand complex technologies and platforms with a degree of simplicity and relevance that means that they can apply that knowledge. I was once described as a trouble causer by our old head of HR, and that was how she introduced me just before I did a presentation to the HR organisation, and that's how I ended up where I am today, by always trying to do something different. When Apple announced podcasts way back in the early days, I grabbed a couple of producers from Sci-Fi and we started making a video podcast. It wasn't my role, it wasn't my job, I wasn't supposed to be doing it, I wasn't in marketing, I wasn't in comms, I wasn't in press. But I wanted to have a go. There's a chunk of other things that I tried to do over the years which got me that kind of reputation as being a disruptor. And I would be happy if people saw that or remembered me as a positive force for disruption.
You see, I think that unless you are annoying someone, if not everyone, then you can't possibly be innovating. So if you're like, right, let's do an email campaign, then, oh cool, go and speak to John and we'll sort it out, can you send over the assets? But if you're like, right, what we're going to do is a video podcast, people go, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? What's that about? And unless you're hacking people off, then you're definitely not.
You're too safe. Yeah, and I think that's important throughout your entire career, is to always be trying to not quite overstep the mark, but be really aware of where the mark is and be constantly brushing up against it, because that's the only way that we drive forwards, and that's the only way that you're ever going to see any kind of improvement, is if you're constantly trying to do different things. Otherwise, we'd all be just doing the same things over and over.
So thanks for sharing all that stuff. That was very interesting indeed, and hopefully we'll come back to some of those bits, but I'd like to talk about your shiny new object now, which is conversational interfaces.
Yes. So
you will not be the first person to talk about this on this podcast, but as people who listen to the podcast regularly will know, I was very much a advocate of voice stuff. Me and Matt Payne at Real Social years ago were super early on it. Voice skill for Domino's. We got super buzzed up about it. I loved how quick the technology would recognise your voice. Mm-hmm. But since then I've become a doubter. So if I'm negative, then don't take it personally. So what is it about conversational interfaces that you are passionate about?
It's the most natural interaction. Okay, we're sitting here right now just having a conversation, and without being all geeky about it, it's about input output. You're asking me for my opinions, and I'm telling you them in a way that everybody can understand. And tech has long been traditionally very hard to get into as a consumer because there's a lot of prerequisites and knowledge you need to know, right? So we all know how to use a mouse now, but when mice were initially introduced, it was really confusing for a lot of people who didn't know how to use them. And conversational interfaces is the perfect way to interact with all of our technology. So I really foresee a future where I walk into my office in the morning and I say, "Morning, Tom," which is what I've called my AI. "What's going on?" And Tom says, "Morning, Paul. You had 17 emails overnight. 9 of them you don't need to respond to. 2 of them were requests for basic information, which I've filled in and sent back. 1 of them was your boss asking for this presentation. I've started that document with some examples, and you've got a meeting coming up in 20 minutes.
Why does that need to be voice? Why couldn't that be an SMS?
Because the time that it's going to take me as I walk into the office, taking off my coat, pouring my coffee, whatever it is I'm doing, I can be multitasking with voice, and it can be sharing that with me hands off, if you like. So we talked before about dictating my text messages and emails because it's easier for me to do than typing them. I can be cognizant and aware of my surroundings whilst I'm walking and doing it, and it's probably, knowing me, more accurate than my typing is. So being able to interact with technology using just my voice is the most natural thing. And when we've done presentations in the office and I ask how many people have used Alexa or Google Home, a proportion of hands go up. And when I ask...
What proportion?
It's high. It's really high. Right. It's surprisingly high.
What, like 50?
Not 70? More, 70, 75. Right. Yeah, a lot. It's again, maybe that's just representative of our employee base. But the next question is, after how many of you have used them, is how many of you have them? And the rest of the hands go up. So almost everybody has some form of voice tool, whether that's a Google Home or an Alexa, or whether they use Siri or Sonos or whatever. And when we then dig deeper and say who is it in the household who predominantly uses it, it's the kids. Because the kids don't have access, for the most part, to a phone, to a computer, to a laptop, to a tablet. And it's much easier for my 8-year-old to walk in and say, "Alexa, play songs by Ollie Murs in the kitchen," than it is for her to borrow my phone, have me log in, go to the music app, and then stream it to the kitchen. She can just do it like that. We use it all the time at home, whether that's how old is Leonardo DiCaprio, or what's 2 cups of rice in grams, or what's the next thing in my schedule. We use it to add stuff into our shopping lists. Again, that's in our house, the shopping list, or certainly when I'm doing it, the shopping list lives on Alexa, and I'll just say add bin bags to the shopping list, add milk to the shopping list, and then when I get to the shop, it's all there. I haven't had to find a pen and a piece of paper and write it down and put it somewhere I'm going to remember it. So for me, conversational interfaces just open up all those other tools that are currently kept behind glass. And I realise this is a first world problem to solve, given the simplicity with which we can use smartphones now. But I just think it has the power to really open up technology to everybody of every age and every level of ability.
And what is the marketing take on that? So voice is a tricky one. Skills aren't being used massively. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's like really notable ones that buck that trend. But as recently, things I read that it's not the main use. And I saw a lot of stuff over Christmas that Alexa was really pushing. Ask Alexa to play Christmas songs or whatever it was. And then there's quite a few brands that are doing sampling. So Alexa, send me a sample of whatever. What do you think are the current opportunities for brands, and what do you think the opportunities will be in the future? So
this year at CES, for example,
did you go?
I didn't go this year. It's the first year in 6 years I haven't had to go, which was
I know, it's a tough life, man.
Yeah, I know. Right? It was very hard to complain about doing that, but what I will say is this: when you're coming out of that post-Christmas bloated, I've eaten too much, I've drunk too much, and I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to being healthy in January.
Vegas. Then
the first week is they send you off to Las Vegas, where there's no such thing as a small portion. But yeah, so CES this year, as much as last year, it was about conversational interfaces and Alexa and Google being built into everything. So it was impossible to find a stand that didn't have works with Alexa or home integration on it. And I think that's really interesting because it doesn't just add intelligence and it's not really sentience, but it adds interaction into everyday objects at a timely time. So if you take fridges, for example, why would you not have a smart fridge?
Why would about $4,000?
Well, that's one really good reason. Hopefully we'll see the prices drop as quickly as 4K TVs did. But yeah, so price aside, that's the moment when I need to make a note of what's in and not in the fridge. So if I'm going to want to buy milk, I'm going to know when I'm stood in front of the fridge. So having a way of saying to the fridge, "Oh, I've run out of milk. Alexa, add milk to the shopping list." It makes sense from the point of view of the context that you're in at the time. Whereas if I have to go to the fridge, find out I haven't got any milk, and then go away and do 3 additional tasks, whether that's find a pen, pick up my phone, add it to a text message or a note or whatever, it's not as contextually aware. So I think it gives brands a bit more interplay, and I think where you'll see it being really interesting is when I said milk, it's just going to add milk to the shopping list. I could have said, Alexa, order me milk, which is, coming down. We've got dash buttons already.
Do you have any dash buttons?
I don't have any dash buttons, and I can tell you exactly why. It's because I'm a tight-fisted northerner. And I don't necessarily subscribe to brand loyalty in as much as I'll buy whatever's on offer at the shop. So when it comes to dishwasher tablets or toilet rolls or all the usual things dash buttons are there for, I'd rather hunt out the value bargain rather than hitting the button. I know, and we're looking at 50p per product they're saving.
You'll spend $400 on a remarkable.
Yeah,
you refuse to.
That's all my Achilles heels on both feet.
Because we got a dash button for Andrex,
right?
And but the problem is you can only buy like 50.
Yeah.
So for 1 week of the quarter or whatever, your back room has like a massive,
huge pile. But that's the thing, isn't it? Because I suppose with Alexa, the way that I think about it, and I use that as an example because it is about transactions and shopping for me. If I say order milk, order toilet roll, or whatever it is, I'm not throwing a brand into there. So it provides, it creates initially a barrier between the consumer and the brand because I'm asking for a generic product. And at this point, Alexa could well say to me, which brand do you want? And then I get to pick.
Wouldn't you punch your fridge
every time? Yeah, right. It could be a long conversation.
Over and over again.
But again, there's some really good places for it. I don't think it's got a home everywhere. For example, when you're watching TV, it's so much easier to say, Alexa, play episode 7, series 2 of Mr. Robot, than it is to try and navigate through that with traditional buttons. And again, adding things to notes, reminders. I use them a lot when we're cooking and say, Alexa, set a timer for 7 minutes, because that's just quicker and easier than pulling out my phone. Yeah. So I think we'll get used to that, but I do think it's a challenge for brands as much as it is an opportunity, because you are disintermediating them. That will continue, but if you can provide a much better service, then you'll be the default go-to brand, and loyalty will become much more important.
So where do you think emotional recognition might come into play? So I interviewed Mark Evans, who is, I'm going to try and get this right. I think he's the marketing director or head of marketing at the Direct Line Group. Sorry, Mark. And he was talking about biometrics. Yep. And how that versions of different smartphones can recognize different emotions, and in China, WeChat, they're changing the UX based on people's emotion, and there's like 45 different emotions. So maybe this is a kind of a sort of pre-Cambridge Analytica wonderland, or pre-GDPR wonderland that I'm talking about here. But first off, would you be happy for Alexa to track your emotional response to different things? So it might hear you say Kleenex, oh, that shit's always too expensive or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I hate that, or like, oh, I love Galaxy or whatever. Would you be into that, and would you be happy to share that data? And do you think the public would ever accept such a level of emotional scrutiny?
I would be happy with that, but it's interesting because I have this conversation with people. I've discovered that I am old, but I will constantly talk to people about my Gmail address that I've had since before Gmail launched, and I still remember.
How did you manage that?
Somebody sent me an invite a
Oh,
long time ago. So I was on like the original testing group, but I remember people at the time saying to me, "But they read all your emails." And I said, nobody reads my emails. There's a computer that looks for words and then it adds adverts. But this was at a time when an email address from Hotmail or one of the other providers was £9.99 a month or £4.99 a month. And a lot of people are too young to remember that.
Really?
And I've never had a problem. So either you had an email address with your service provider, BT Internet, FreeServe, all those back in the day, or you paid for a Hotmail account with, if you were lucky, 5 meg of storage.
Do you know what the worst thing I ever did with email? I had a Yahoo email address, and I was in a band at the time. And we were really prolific. We wrote loads of songs. How good they were is someone else's decision. But what we would do is that we would have you had Yahoo notes that came with the email.
Right.
And so we had 4 things. We had ideas, semi-formed ideas, nearly finished and done. Right. And we did this for 3 or 4 years.
Kanban back in the day.
And basically, so we'd have all the tempos, the keys, the lyrics, the chord sequences, then the band split up, whatever. And a year later, I nostalgically thought, I'll just take a wander through these notes, and I typed in the password, and it says, all of your data has been deleted, and you cannot get this back in bold. And that was like 4 years worth of work.
Yeah.
Gone. So that's nothing to do with this podcast, but I still feel that burn, and hopefully I will get senior enough in my career to meet someone at Yahoo and go, can you just go back?
Dig that server out.
Sorry, I completely distracted you.
No, that's fine. It's about privacy. So I generally think that we've got to a position where people have got too used to not paying for stuff, but are not aware of the 3-sided market that's going on. That's that whole, if you're not the customer, then you're probably the product. And I think a lot of people expect to be able to use services for free, but then complain about advertising. Well, how, it's hard to picture if you're not into technology, but somewhere there's servers that are running and there are developers writing code, and all this needs to be paid for. So nothing's really free. And so I don't mind handing over with my permission all various different bits of data.
Do you feel the same about your kids in that?
I wouldn't hand them over.
No, but are you happy for Amazon to listen to you and me waffle on about Remarkable or whatever?
Yeah.
But are you happy for the Californian mega giants to be listening to your kids and what's going on in their lives?
Well, this is where you're in danger of becoming a hypocrite if you say no. So my kids both have phones. Whether people agree that's right or wrong is their own opinion. But we have very frank and open conversations about what you should and shouldn't share on phones, and how you should and shouldn't interact online. They don't have unfiltered in access to the internet. That'd be crazy. But I think the only way to educate them is to expose them to it in a sensible way. And do I mind if other people are listening and providing services based on that feedback? If it's additive to their experience, and if it is something that we've all agreed to. It's difficult with kids because I don't think you can hold them accountable to the privacy notices that they subscribe to. Whereas with an adult, if you click I agree to the terms and conditions, you're accountable for that. If you're a kid under a certain age, it's very unfair, I think, to hold them responsible for that. That's something the parents should be paying attention to. But again, do I have a problem with them listening to them? No, it depends. It depends on what the service is, but for the most part, no. I know that's a wishy-washy answer.
No, not at all. I just it was maybe a mean question. I just interesting.
But it's a good one, right? Because you kids are going to grow up with this technology. They're going to get exposed to it at some point, and you as an adult have to accept their responsibility for their education, because schools aren't necessarily going to teach them about being internet savvy or being aware of some of the dangers and challenges around this technology. Nowhere teaches them that at the moment. So I think we have to be responsible as parents and help them understand that. And, at some point, that's a challenge you're going to cross, right? And how do you deal with that with your kid? And what's your thoughts on, are you happy to give them an iPhone, but it's only got, I don't know, the BBC iPlayer on it so they can watch Peppa Pig on repeat for hours? Because that affords you the luxury of a bit of peace and quiet, and you can go off and do the things that you need to do.
Currently, she's quite interested in me doing Google Docs.
Really?
Because she's only 7 months, so in the morning she'll sit on my lap and I'll sort of do some work, and she's transfixed by my formatting.
My eldest proclaimed best dad ever when I gave her access to Google Sheets, because she loves spreadsheets. It's one of those things, I think, as a kid, right? Well, we used to play.
What are you doing to these children?
Preparing them for a life in hard work.
You're locked in a cave or something.
But didn't you? So we used to play like post offices and banks, and we'd love stationery and writing things out. And they would play schools and take registers, and they're just doing all that stuff on Google Sheets on a Chromebook. I think it's weird too. But
they're doing what?
The youngest one, who wants to be a vet, she made herself a spreadsheet about all the different operations that she could give to animals.
And what, she costed them up herself?
She didn't. She did actually cost them up. Yeah. The eldest one. Oh, it was kind of a cat hit by car, hamster having babies, fish. She had this whole list of things, services she was going to offer. The eldest one was using
it. What, she do like hamster cesarean?
That I don't want to see. But it's as natural for them as a notebook would have been to us, because that's what they see me using all the time, right? They see me doing work on a computer. So.
Well, I think we should leave this podcast at hamster cesarean. That's not where I thought we were going to get to. But thank you, man. I think you've got a really interesting take on innovation, and I really feel that we've been through similar experiences with HR seeing you as a kind of trouble causer, and I think secretly both of us sort of take quite a lot of pride in that.
Oh yeah.
And it's been great to spend some time with you and get to know you a bit better. If anyone is equally as inspired as I am, how would you want them to get in touch with you? You
can find me on Twitter at Paul Rushforth, and I am on LinkedIn and everywhere else you'd expect to find me. Really, I'm not brilliant at the Twitters, but I'm generally quite engaged on the other social media platforms.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been really interesting.
So I was waiting for that. Cheers.